Welcome to where the furniture isn't always the best, but them views, they are amazing.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 13th floor where the furniture isn't always the best, but the views are amazing. I am your host, B. Jones, man. I got my man, BJ, down bottom with the bricks. Brick City, what's happening?
Hey, man, we trying to build this thing, keep it up.
I
Day
agree.
by day, brick by brick.
Brick by brick. Exactly. Fresh, what's going on, man, with the unity, unite in the background, man? I'm loving the background.
Man, another, K always try to take us to Wakanda. It's another beautiful day in Zamunda over here. We just living off the fat of the land, baby.
And Coach K, man, you got to explain his background for us just a little bit, man.
He's too young. He's too young for that, K.
You said he's too young for that?
Nah,
you
man,
don't even know that.
I got the public enemy in the background, man. It's all good.
Yeah, man, that's from Fear of a Black Planet.
Oh, okay. Thank you for connecting all of the dots. Fear of a Black Planet. Are we afraid of the Black Planet?
Oh, I don't think we are.
No, we know what that looks like for the other side, though.
Mm-hmm.
But welcome, ladies and gentlemen, man. Now, first off, I want to start off by commending you fellas for standing in for me last week and holding it down in such a massive way. I gave y'all my commentary on the podcast already, but just everything that y'all spoke on, all of the points that y'all hit, man, I really wish I was able to add to it. And I will today, but I just think that y'all hit, all of the pressure points that we as Black men need to be hitting in the light of, our current situation and circumstances.
We definitely appreciate that. It's always an interesting situation when we got to fill your spot, but we try to do the best that we can and still deliver a quality show. People don't really understand how much you keep stuff together and keep us from just getting crazy. So, hopefully we can get too far off the rails and we did a good job last week.
Nah, man, y'all the ones that keep it all in line, man. I think the biggest, one of the biggest things, man, I appreciate it from the podcast, and there's so many, but that rage aspect, man, when y'all put it into words, just how we feel, that was so helpful because we get asked, and y'all hit it all the time. I'm being asked, how do you feel? What are you thinking? What are you going through? And, it's a gamut of emotions. But to sum it up in one word, I mean, I wish it was a catchy acronym we could put to that thing, but the rage is just, that's just really where I'm at, man. And seeing the world raging with us has been huge. I'm not the biggest on social media. I haven't stayed in the news so much, just trying to control the space and the energy around me, but just knowing that, people are finally coming to the table and understanding how this is a world issue. You know what I'm saying? This is something that needs to be handled on a world stage, and us continually stepping up to the plate to get it there. I just want to see that, continue to push forward.
I think that's an excellent point because as far as being the United States, the tables are normally turned. We're usually jumping in to support some other country's cause or to say that, hey, this is unjust and leading that charge. Now, all of a sudden, you have the rest of the world that's saying, United States, you need to get your act together. What are you guys doing over there to Black people? So that's just interesting to see that. And this, you think of every major city and something's going on. There's been some protest, some sign of, hey, we're with you, and that's just awesome to see.
And what's even, go ahead.
I think that's definitely been one of the most powerful things about it is that it hasn't just been a fleeting moment, and that even as much as they try to, there's convictions for the murderers of George Floyd, so you guys should settle down. That has not been what's resonated with people, but even just the
charges.
Exactly. The charges being put on them, that everyone, those masses tried to get us to settle down and act like that was supposed to be the stopping point. But the fact that people are continuing to allow the message to be what it is so far past just Floyd's murder and the understanding of the pushing down of the people.
Yeah, man. I mean, when's the last time you seen an injustice like this happen and over a 2-week span, the protests and the marches do nothing but rise? You know, we are understanding and getting back to, well, I hope that we're getting back to, I'm seeing it, but we're getting back to, understanding that things don't happen in a week's time span or even a month's time span. When you talk about the boycotts and during the civil rights era, I see you, Spidey. Or was that, what is that? What's the other one? Maybe it's his
The man
Batman.
is hype.
Thank you, Asher, for derailing this whole conversation, man. You're
Exactly.
amazing for that. Man, the boycotts in the 60s from the civil rights movement, man, and how these things lasted for it lasted for a year, upwards of that. So looking at this, the things that are happening, DC having Black Lives Matter Boulevard or whatever exactly, it is, but having the state, the DC mayor come out and like put that to the forefront. We got some of our very own Trinice, BJ's folk out there making it happen in a big way in DC. So, and then watching everything happen all over the country. It's just powerful. And I think there's so many ways that people can get involved, and we'll list some of them as we go through the podcast, to keep the momentum going and understanding that there are a variety of areas that we're going to have to focus on. Not just the political aspect that we speak on very much so, but the community aspect, the policing aspect, the educational aspect. All of those are very important to pay attention to in the midst of everything that we have going on right now. I want to pose to you guys just to see how over the last week your interactions have been, because I can tell you mine have been quite astonishing when it comes to people of the alternate race or other races. I was doing a bike ride over by the airport, BWI bike trail on Saturday. Never ridden a bike before. I promise you it's one of the best workouts you can get. Just make sure you got the right bike and not trying to go biking with a mountain bike. It's terrible, but that's a story for another day. But I swear every white person I rode past made it a point to like, hey, how you doing? Or speak in some sort of manner. And it got to the point where it was like, wow, this is like really weird, because I've never had that happen in such a grand fashion, before. So, when you have the larger corporations taking a stance, being vocal about where they stand on the issue, whether it be genuine or not. Some of us that still work in these corporate entities have been asked to step to the forefront of this issue and, kind of speak on it or whatever. So let's just, talk to me about your interactions, man, and how it's been for you over the last week.
That was that power stare right there.
My dog is ready for it. Go ahead, BJ. You got the mic.
Interactions last week, totally different than what I would say is normal. Saying much more people are in tune, I believe, to what's going on, questioning how you doing, how's your family doing. Again, I want to believe everything is genuine, and wanting to really understand like what's going on, what I'm thinking. But at sometimes you do get to the point where you just don't want to talk no more about it, because it's just you're on like repeat mode all day long with those conversations though. So again, I'm grateful for the conversation, but sometimes it's like it can be overwhelming sometimes, because like you said, it's weird, it's different, because you normally don't get that many people asking you how you're doing or what you're thinking or how the family's doing. But again, people being genuine with it. If it is genuine, I do respect it and honor it. One of the things that I've been able to be a part of is, again, if I look at the makeup of our church, we're one of maybe a dozen Black families that are represented in the church. So when we talk about it, I've been given a platform that, and one of the gentlemen who's actually coming back to our church as a supporting pastor, have been given a platform to speak on a Facebook Live event the last 2 Mondays about just our perspective and keeping it in biblical foundation as well. But that method of talk has actually opened the eyes and ears, I believe, a lot of people in the church as well. Because sometimes it's ignored, sometimes it's overlooked. That those things or those feelings aren't harbored amongst Christians, and that's a total lie, right? That if anybody would ever say that is not truthful, then I don't know where they attend or what they're really observing in the world. But I can honestly say the one thing that's kind of been, and I had the conversation earlier with a coworker, is like the one thing that's hurtful. I work for the state of Florida Department of Education, and I'm still waiting for them. I'm waiting for my department to say something, a statement about some stance, some supportive, some say something. So that's been the frustrating part. Actually, we talk about it. It's not just a police action. I mean, when it comes down to it, these are things that, why are we in education? To fight for equity, fight for equality. That's really what I'm in this thing for, right? When I look at it, a lot of my work revolves around Black and brown children across the state of Florida, but not solely. It's a socioeconomic issue in the state of Florida, because when I go from Miami-Dade to Broward to Polk County to Orange County, depending on what neighborhood I'm in, it's not about just the Black kids or the Hispanic kids. It's the same white kids as well that live in the trailer park, and this whole area is surrounded by trailer parks when I'm in Polk County or St. Lucie County. So my perspective is, again, this is an issue that stems, yes, in the Black community, because we're talking about a situation and something that's been systemic for a long time, but we got a lot of work to do. And a system like the education system for the state of Florida, I need somebody. Those are the people you would expect to hear from, and when they're silent, it's like it just leaves you wondering.
That's very interesting, because I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine last night, and she was telling me something very similar with her organization that she works for. And I think it's pretty sad that, companies are still taking the stance of talking or having conversation about these issues as taboo, especially when we've come through the climate of diversity and equity inclusion, and have been building like this monstrous platform off of that, and to be hit with this storm of social injustice. And it's been over a long period of time, but even within like a short period of time, to be hit with a storm like this and not step to the forefront, it calls into question the leadership of such organizations. And I think that those working for these organizations, she was questioning, her loyalty to it. And if it hadn't, people are in situations, where you got to provide, right? But she was just like, nah, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to take this day off, and I'm going to take the next week off to, process my emotions, you know what I'm saying? Figure out what all I have going on, and figure out if this is actually the right fit to me, kind of taking that power back.
I made the statement before we got on night. I got one more day of work tomorrow, then I'm going to be off for 7 days. I got some soul searching to do. And that's just being totally transparent.
It's very interesting, like you said, watching how a lot of these corporations are playing this situation, and taking note of the ones who still decide to skirt around the main issue. While it's, I don't even know the word, watching so many organizations, look to contribute so much money that they say, I'm always, where's all of this money going? What is their way of doing? Hey, we're pledging 500 million. We're going to pledge, 100 million to the Black communities, but where's this money going? What are they doing? What's the paper trail on that? And kind of seeing what goes from there. Because right now you are seeing an extreme influx of corporations, large corporations, saying they're pledging insane amounts of money, but what is the track on that? What is where are they taking this money to? What does that mean? How is it being used and all of that?
I think that's a very go ahead, Kay.
I think that's a great point about where the money's going. I'm very curious to know how the money's going to be used when it's donated to certain organizations. And then the other thing is that I think for a lot of these corporations, and I can totally see the school board going this way, where they're going to claim they don't want to get involved because it's political, and politics is not something they discuss in their workplace, or politics is not something that the school boards and want to be involved in. But this is so much more than politics. And why wouldn't you? If I'm the schools, I'm definitely involved, and I'm definitely supporting making a stand, because some of that funding that we're talking about defunding, and
exactly.
that's a whole
Going to
nother
next.
conversation.
All right.
That's a whole nother conversation that we'll get to. But you stand to gain something in this. So even if your interest is not genuine, you could at least fake it for a little bit, right? To see if you can secure your interest. But look, obviously, look, there's, in my opinion, there's a lot of corporations, a lot of places faking it right now just because they don't want to be on the wrong side of this. Because I think since they've seen this large scale ability to organize and do things, nobody wants to be listed on the wrong side saying that this particular company, this organization, this entity said nothing during this time. And now you know what? We're going to boycott you.
Yeah, and it's the
okay, do you really want to be that guy? Do you
Yeah,
really
do
want
you
to be
really
that
want
guy?
to be that guy?
it's been the power of the call out, right? Like that's been one of the biggest forces during this time and this moment, is how many people are calling out regular Karens, but also, you know, these corporations or these CEOs who have made these crazy statements, whether they thought it was a personal statement on whatever. I know I saw a guy who owned, I want to say, a cement company or something else like that, where he tried to say that it was his nephew got a hold of his Facebook. He's the one who posted that, you know, anti-black message, and it's just interesting. Well, it's interesting to see people get called out, but then it's also interesting to watch the way that they try to backslide, the things that they try to throw it on, or to, the biggest thing is being able to say it's political, right? To try to guise it as, oh, it's a political thing, and I don't talk politics. I saw a guy who said that he quit his Amazon Prime membership because he logged into Amazon and he saw Black Lives Matter, and you know, nobody better not be telling me about no politics, the XYZ. I don't talk about politics with corporations and da da da. And it's
say I want my 2 day. That's it.
And it's always so interesting to me to watch those types of people who will, at the end of the day, I don't care. I feel you're racist, period. Like there's no compromise in my thought process on the people who allow these false representations of what's really going on to be what they try to keep on pushing. But it's fascinating to me the fact that they can still have this like blind life. Like they can still feel like, you look at Candace, whatever that Owens, is that her name?
Oh my God!
You look at somebody like her, and it's almost like watching a very slow train wreck, because you're sitting there so fascinated listening to what she spews, and are so confused and perplexed as to how her analysis has led to these like points of information. It's just like, you really strongly believe that these things are factual and, like, you know, make sense in your eyes? Or I know I was watching this one, even though I've been in a few social media I don't want to say battles. I don't be trying to battle these people. I don't want it to be aggressive.
But you be battling, bro, and you be winning, man. I'm loving it.
I have, but I know someone who looks down upon us, their first defense is to try to make it seem like we are uneducated or that we are very aggressive or things. So I always try to make sure when I get into those moments with people online that I take the breaths of being able to TI them and really, make sure whatever I'm saying is very powerful and poignant, but it's also, it's breaking down something. It isn't just saying, hey, you're dumb racist and I think dumb. It's figuring out how to really make sure whatever I say is not just a blanketed statement, is going past just, doing, because that's their other first thing. They always try to, oh, you're doing the same thing that you say that you don't want to do. So, and it's like, I actually am not, but I make sure to very poignantly push, to break that stuff down. But going back, I was on social media.
I'm about to
And
say,
I
I done
saw-
had like 3 different points off of this thing. But where we going? Where we going?
But she was breaking down, trying to say that, in a sense, and this was a white lady saying that Black people's plight was, in a sense, their own, in that people who can't get out of a bad situation, it's their own mental issues, in a sense, that are the block. Like, and because we are so focused on the past that we are blocking our blessings, in a sense, of accomplishment for now and in the future. And it's almost gut-wrenching listening to people spew this craziness, and you're like, what? Like, you really think that's the contributing factor to why minorities have it so hard in the societies, because we are still talking about slavery, and that's, it's got us down. And I can't remember the words or the emotion that you used of like the cloud of what it leaves over you, but it was it was crazy. It was crazy.
Well, to respond to those individuals, I just say level the playing field and see what happens. Level the playing field and see what happens.
But to them, they feel that playing field is already leveled. That's what is interesting. Like, her viewpoint, and I mean, I had to. She was on one of my friends' feeds, and like it was all in one conversation. I mean, so many people were getting at her, and she was going back with so many people. I had to block her, and I never once. My 2 engagements were, one, I told her to take several seats, and then the second engagement was I just told everybody to block her and to report her profile as racist, because it was just like I couldn't take just reading what she was spewing anymore, and knowing like she really thought she was coming from like she was really thought she was a resource of information of why we were doing so bad, and that like she was going at people talking about it was, our you're harboring on to old aggressions and things that you dealt with in the past. The past is the past, just leave it there. And you would, I've made it because I did hard work in XYZ, and that's why I'm successful, because my Italian heritage, they didn't have it easy getting here. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot.
I mean, the statistics speak for themselves. If it was so equitable, we wouldn't have set-asides for minorities. If it was so equitable, we wouldn't have, the words just went out of my head. What is
Affirmative
it called?
action.
Affirmative action. So, again, you level the playing field, you see where we are. Going back to, I think, earlier point BJ made, and I was looking at it from a leadership standpoint, because you got the school boards, and you brought it up again too, Fresh, when you were talking about the nephew, or the adult blaming it on a nephew or maybe a younger nephew. But I think there's a larger sense of responsibility that has to be taken for folk in those leadership roles, because when you're talking about the head of a school or the head of a school board or whatever, you're responsible for young minds, and they're impressionable. And even if they're getting the worst of the worst at home, to validate it on a place where they spend the majority of their day, 8 to 10 hours or whatever, they spend most kids spend more time with their school or aftercare than they even spend with their parents. So to not be able to give a strong statement in what should be the equitable and justice direction, is a problem. when I'm looking at protests and I see, you know, there has to be a white person to jump in between a black person and a policeman's baton, you know, there's clearly a problem. But that leadership is, you know, what I think is most important right now. And it's not just important for us. It's important for those that stand beside us and get it and understand it to kind of help put themselves in the middle of this situation to continue to help us progress forward. I have another. BJ, you on mute.
Sorry, I put it on mute because my internet was acting up. It's gonna be because the sad part is it's gonna be, think about the kids that are in school now. I'm thinking K-12, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be that generation. First of all, they're seeing everything at a younger age because of social media, because of the news, the internet, everything they're on. So they're much more aware of things going on in the world. Yes, we saw stuff growing up in the news, watching news with our parents, or coming to the house and stuff was on from grandma and them when we were younger, but they're bombarded with it today. That generation is going to be the benefactors or the change makers. Either one, they're going to benefit from whatever results from all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you think about, and I think it was last week we made the comment that, like, think about it. On this call, 6 kids are represented from the ages of Asher's about to be 4, about to be 3,
4,
about to be 3,
about
4.
to be 4.
Lord, yeah, time is about to be 4. To my oldest is 13, and Nia's how old?
He'll be 11 in a couple of days.
Okay, so my son is the oldest, right? So from 4 to 13, that's 6 kids. And the comment was made, every generation before us has not been able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We have a chance to get it right for their sake. And if we're not doing that, shame on us. And I say that as a blanket statement, because I know people are trying, but if we can't get it right for them, then they're stuck with it, trying to figure out, they're going to be going through these same conversations 20, 30 years from now about how they feel about their kids not being able to go out or be safe or be protected. And that cycle will never be broken.
I think that's the like I always say, the gift and the curse of the internet, right? Is it's because of right now an exposure that there have been 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids who have watched George Floyd be murdered. You know what I mean? And have actually seen the video where back in our time, and even before that, you talk about real civil rights, a lot more of it was hearsay, and voiced to you than being able to visually see it repeatedly, in your face. And that's been one of the biggest factors and the biggest causes for a real, to me, it brings excitement because I see so many videos now of, especially a lot of young white children calling their parents out, doing things and saying things and being vocal and saying they're distasteful of what's going on, even though they're not fully aware of how deep and systemic it truly is. The fact that they are holding those conversations and are making those the forefront of what's going on and willing to speak out, go and protest and do things of this nature is one of the few things that really has me, feeling that our future is bright, and especially when it comes to the children, that they really have a focus and thought process that they're not going to allow this to continue.
You know what it is, man? I mean, the social connectedness between these kids is unreal, from what they watch on YouTube, the TikToks, and all these other social media platforms. I mean, they're understanding a little bit more. Like you said, they might not have a full understanding of history, but they're understanding a little bit more of what human interaction is supposed to be
And
about.
like you said, they understand there's a disconnect from what they're feeling, what they believe in, whether it's their friends, whether it's just they just know wrong is wrong, and what their parents and grandparents are saying in response to everything that's going on. And when you have a kid, that's what I tell people. Racism isn't inherited; it's a learned behavior.
Period. It's a consistent somebody telling you or making the jokes of an X, Y, Z that then you just grow to accept. It is definitely not something that is just just as soon as you come out that you're have a distaste for anybody. But that's also what has allowed that momentum to grow in these younger generations, connectivity, right? The fact that they do have friends all over the world, you know, playing Fortnite and are hanging out and doing stuff. And that's really what has allowed for that understanding and that exposure. Well, wait a minute, you told me that all, you know, black people do X, Y, Z, and I got several friends who have never done that. You know what I mean? And being able to have that dialogue and see, I thought they talked like this, or I thought, you know, they hung out like that, and that's not true. And being able to talk about it, have that dialogue, and call people out has been one of the most powerful things to see in real time.
Speaking of the kids, because I had to have a really interesting conversation with Nia on Saturday, and it was swirling around the protest because she was so fearful of actually being out and around because of the things that she had seen on whether it be social media or heard or whatever her friends talk about. And, you know, it's hard to really know what your kids take in, but it's really important to have these types of conversations with them. So I encourage every parent to take some time, especially with your older children, if you haven't already, to really try to help them process through whatever they may be taking in and ask them, you know, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? I saw a New York Times article on it, and, you know, it just made me think and jump in and ask the question. And so we talked about it, and she understood that, you know, somebody had died or whatever, but she didn't know the severity of the whole George Floyd situation. And she knew people were protesting. And funny enough, we're learning about the Bill of Rights in social studies. So, you know, all of these things that are supposed to pull us together. But the thing that I really had to drive home for her was the fear aspect of it, because I don't want her to ever react or rely on fear as an act, you know, motivating factor. You know, we talked about the fears that you come into life with, but I had to help her process, you know, information, because the news will have you thinking a completely different thing, you know what I'm saying, than what's actually happening on the ground, and choose to highlight what they want. And so when we talking about what's going on in DC, I had to show her videos of like the true cultural aspect of it. In one of the protests where they out there, it's basically a big party. Go-go music going, people out there, you know, rocking, protesting, you know, you got your chants and your marches and everything, but no violence, no police brutality. And not that these things aren't happening in different places across the nation, but getting her to understand that there's a much larger purpose. And even if these things were to happen, you know, you don't have to fear being around your people, and, and understanding what that kind of means. So I know, BJ, you got older children, you know what I'm saying? How do you go about having those conversations?
Madison was probably in the same boat as Nia, because I had no idea. She was coming to me about all the stuff that she was seeing on TikTok. And again, I'm not on TikTok. I don't ever plan to create the TikTok account. We
Not even a
let her
family
do it.
TikTok, man.
Dang, I
Kellen hit me
thought
with
we
that
gonna
joint the other
see
day.
one
He was like,
day.
we got to do a family TikTok.
Gina has one. I let her monitor that piece. That's just something I'm like, I'm good. I don't even want to learn that part of it. We talk about it, but she has seen so much stuff and just had questions. And again, I think she was fearful too when we talked about potentially going to one of the protests last week, and about it. But her thing was that what she was seeing, she's thinking we're going to be caught in the middle of something and then be rushed about, like, but we had, like you, we had to show that there are other protests going on. There's stuff all around the community, all around the United States, that people are protesting peacefully, that the rioting and looting that's supposedly going on and occurring during the protests. As we went back and showed her the videos of, that's not really the protesters, right? In cases. So it's really just by educating. The whole piece is just showing the whole picture. Like I tell anybody, if you're getting your news from one news source, you're a very one-sided individual and have lopsided views. I'm not saying you got to believe everything, but you should look at all the things. I had the conversation. My pastor, he actually said he's Hispanic. He's one of the associate pastors, but he said because he watches the news in many different languages and to see what's going on. He said you'd be surprised that the Hispanic news, they'll just talk about the protest. They're not showing the video what happened. They're not showing all that. They're just talking about the rioting and looting going on. So you got a whole group of Hispanics that watch nothing but that news station. that think it's just an uprising. All the black people out here about to burn everything down. Like that's how you think communism works. So like they show you what you
But
want.
that's what, media is so powerful, and you're right, man. Like that was a big thing just a couple last week, was that like the Latin Kings had something where they told the cops, I ain't got to worry about coming in here. We shooting all black people type stuff. And it was because there was a disconnect of understanding of what was going on. And they went straight to that. And it was a tense situation for a minute until there was dialogue between some of the other gangs there in California and some other areas where those types of situations were happening, that misinformation, that media only presenting one piece of what it is, and people getting the assumption that, oh, just like you said, oh my goodness, black people are going to burn everything down and they just want to kill everybody because this guy died. And it's a lot. It's a lot. You got like several things you want to let out, Kay.
I'm just listening, man. You know, you guys are right. It's all about what's being portrayed, and unfortunately, that is the tool that's being used to either fuel this, to discredit this. You just never know. So when you mentioned the thing about the Latin Kings, you know, the Latin Kings were on the news here in Chicago because there's a part, you know, where they are, that they said, nah, nobody's coming in here looting, nobody's coming in here causing trouble. And they were actually like strapped, you know, rifles and everything. Ready. You could see them stand up on top of buildings and stuff, just monitoring what was going on. They were checking cars that came by, and they even showed a clip of the police rolling by and told them, good job, Cicero, because that's the part of Chicago that they were in, and they told them, good job. And the cops just kept on rolling.
That's a huge part, man. I saw, actually, Chris's dad put me on to something he said he saw in the news, and I think that's a huge call to action to all the gangs in America for real, because you got to have it. You know, not only do we need to be trained on guns, and I'm working on that this week and everything, but for those who have it already in these communities, and you spoke about it last week when you tiptoed around Farrakhan, Carol, but that was one of his calling cards when we were at the Million Man March, was for the gangs to step up and to police their communities. It's huge, and I mean that would have a monumental effect on any and everything going forward.
It will, but it's funny because there's another part to that, and it's okay now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where,
but later on, it may not be okay.
It turns.
There's another side of it where
now
are you protecting these businesses because this is where you wash your money? Are you protecting these businesses for a fee? Like, so there's other things involved, right? That
it got to be the right type of situation. I absolutely understand.
It's the narrative, and it's all on how it's covered.
Yeah, I got you.
I've seen several, especially artists, you know, speak to exactly that. But I think that's been one of the things I've been trying to understand. I feel like there's going to be some type of justice force or something new that's going to come out, that there's no more quote unquote police, but there's now the justice force, or you know what I mean? Something that is this new level of protection for the community, but it's got a different type of, I don't know, you know, somehow how you are able to be in the justice force has to be, you know, involved in racial sensitivity training and XYZ or other things. But I just feel that that's where the momentum is going, is that they are doing a good job making it a blanketed police feeling of it needs to be totally disbanded. But I don't feel that conversation is fully talked out to get what does that mean? Where does that go? How does that?
I don't think it needs to be disbanded.
Yeah.
However, it needs to be restructured.
Yes.
And that's part of that defund conversation, correct?
Correct. That's part of the defunding conversation. And I think, to me, there's three things that need to be looked at. One is, who are you hiring? Right? If you're hiring, look, all about supporting vets, got a lot of vets in my family, but you need to vet the vets that you're hiring, right? There's a certain amount of PTSD, and that's a whole nother situation, right? Now we're looking at a domino effect. You take some people that may not have gotten the attention that they needed when they got out, or while they were still in, they didn't get the proper reintegration into being a civilian, and you put them in a police force, and now in their mind, look, man, they're in the war zone.
Period.
Right, and everybody else that is potentially a criminal is the enemy. So, and it's not just vets, right? The other people that you got to really look at these people's psychological state before you put them in a police uniform.
And it's all there. Like every time we go through this stuff, the files are already there.
I think that's the biggest thing is there needs to be more transparency, but also just more what I feel is common sense, in the sense of you should not have somebody who has a continued issues with dealing with the public, dealing with, having, what do they call it, abuse or whatever else, they call it within the police force, that you have all of these issues that are documented, but yet you still are okay hiring him and saying, okay, well, he said he's not going to do it no more. And, it was only in California where he did it. And, there's no Koreans over here.
Well,
so
that's why that part of it is that what here, as I always say, is an independent review committee outside of the police department, a community review, whatever the case may be. You go back to the idea of community policing, which, again, it has its drawbacks as well, because we've seen in the past that same thing that Kara just mentioned about, I'm from the community. Now I think I run the community. I think I can control this. Yeah. You can have a whole bunch of other mishaps with that as well. But a review board that reviews applications and reviews the recommendations of people before they can become officers, extra training, on the job training where you actually have psychologists and
So don't skate over that, because that's the second part, right? One, it's who you're hiring. Two is what does the training look like? I can't remember, man. There's been so many social media postings, but there was something like a police officer spends, I don't know, man. I can't remember the exact numbers. I want to say it's 780 hours.
It's
maybe it's 500. How many?
12 weeks, whatever that equates to.
Whatever the hours was, and then they showed some other profession that took way more hours to be certified in. And okay, so what does that look like? The training. And then the third piece is, what is the goal? I think to serve and protect is way too broad. It's not defined enough. To serve and protect who? Who are we serving and protecting? I think that's
Great
the third. And until there is that restructure and the redirection of funding as far as what needs to be funded, what programs, and you got to get to something. See, right now, people are approaching this as if it's a national thing that you just pass and boom, it's done. It's not.
Correct.
It's by city.
Yeah. City, town,
the top-down approach that people are thinking that you have to take to this thing, it makes absolutely probably gonna be that top-down approach makes absolutely no sense when you understand the interworkings of all of these. It's absolutely bottom up.
Yeah, period. I think I'm very interested because in Massachusetts, where he was killed. Where was it?
Minneapolis.
Minnesota?
There you go, Minneapolis. That they're actually like they're pretty much about to have some new type of police force, something come from this. So I'm very curious to see, what that can create and where that is going to go.
They disbanded the police department. I think it was, I got to look at But I think it was yesterday.
You're right. I remember
Yeah.
hearing and seeing something like that.
Yeah, no, they said that they're going to be the example of what should happen moving forward. So I'm extremely curious watching what will come out of this and how they will reinstitute some way of justice. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know I heard somebody trying to say something along the lines of, that the police, pretty much that, the police aren't like the foundation of it was not built on racism. But correct me if I'm wrong, I'm almost positive like police forces were built to like essentially help slave owners initially, like back in the day, to help slave owners get their slaves. Like that was the basis of, and then it matured into, oh, well, we're already, doing this, that we could do other things. So it's
And even when they abolished slavery, I mean, all of the farmers and local entrepreneurs or whatever that were into slavery, they just matriculated themselves into the justice system.
Period.
So from police officers on up. So, it's history behind that.
Facts.
Absolutely historical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And
before we, go ahead, sir.
About it, minorities couldn't be police officers.
Can be involved in that. So, okay, I want to go ahead, man.
Nah, I'm just saying. I mean, you're looking at as Fresh is saying, it's a very historical infrastructure that now needs to be torn down, and we need to reset. And that's what I think it needs to happen. It's a reset.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, it's like a fraternal order of police, like, and they have that blue line of silence or whatever they want to call it, where that's the biggest thing. I heard, I was listening to Van Lathan talk to a basketball player. Oh my God. What you call it, son? Doc Rivers' son, Austin Rivers. He was talking to Austin Rivers. And Austin Rivers was saying, hey, it's hurting me because I have a lot of people I know who are cops and are in law enforcement and the good people. And, it's crazy watching the country kind of turn on this, that, and the third. So Van's like, well, look, how many people are on your basketball team? He says, I got about 13, 14 people on the basketball team. He said, all right, so on your basketball team, there's one guy who's raping little kids. Does it all the time. Everybody knows about it, but nobody says anything and nobody does nothing to stop it. And I'm talking about everybody, from you guys, the other players, the coaches, the staff, everybody knows, but nobody does anything about it. How many good people are on that basketball team? And he was just like, none. Like, you're right. And that's the thing, is it's the calling out. It's not that people are trying to say that, being a cop itself automatically makes you a racist person, but it is the fact that if you are in this position of power, that you are not holding it up to what what it's meant to be or what it's perceived to be, and you will allow your quote unquote brothers and sisters to do things outside of those lines, and you not speak up, and more importantly, directly impacted at that moment. I was just watching an interview too where I don't know the guy's name, but he was interviewing one of the cops who murdered Floyd's. He was interviewing his lawyer, and the lawyer out his mouth pretty much said that the public should have intervened, while the cops was pretty much trying to say well, they want to act like these other cops should have done something. Why didn't they do anything? And that's a scary thing to have a conversation about, where it's really, you're trying to say now those people who were watching and they were supposed to try to do something, they wouldn't have just got shot and murdered, even worse, that it's just a lot. It's a lot.
I hope he brings that same argument to the court date. Kay, I want to ask you about a conversation we had probably about 5 years ago now. We talked about this very day, this very revolution, right? And we had talked about Obama's presence in history after his presidency. and the figurehead he could be for something like this. We were actually trying to figure out who would be that next person, who would be that Martin Luther King or whatnot. And, you know, I was saying, like, I think it would be him for obvious reasons. I mean, this is the world's president, black man, huge platform, and makes sense 99.999% of the time. He gave a speech last week over a Zoom that I saw. And again, I'm a bubble guy, so I don't really see Twitters and Instagrams and stuff, so I don't know how active he has been or hasn't been in this. But just in your opinion, do you still think or see that or see him as being the figurehead or potential figurehead for the solidification of this movement in time?
Yeah, I don't see anybody else at the moment that could command the respect. Unfortunately, what is a detriment to him being able to do that is the number of black people that say when he was president, he didn't do anything for black people. And that's going to be the problem with people getting behind him, and him being able to be as impactful as he could be. But in my opinion, and this goes back to what I was saying last week, we're going to have to understand that whoever that person is, they are not going to be perfect. They're going to be things we're not going to like. But if they are the greatest chance at unifying us all and us moving in one agreed upon direction, then you're going to have to look past certain things. And for me, again, the president only has as much power as the House and the Senate provides them. You can't just executive order, executive this, executive that, because when you do, then they start saying, oh, well, they're turning this into a dictatorship and blah, 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 blah. So
only when it's the opposite person doing it, though, because it's going on now, and that's not no argument. But
well, he has half of one of the houses, so, you know, it's like, or one of the houses of Congress. So
yeah. So I do still think that that's the guy right now. I don't know who else we could even put in that argument.
I think
The Rock.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's go.
I think that Barack is tired, and that's the only thing that I see as a hindrance is, and I can only imagine trying so hard and then always feeling that, you know, just like you said, there's still people, you ain't do nothing for black people. You ain't, like, it don't matter. And just the mere fact of securing the presidency, how much that for black people, like, period, just that alone, like how big that was, it's I can only imagine how much that plays in his head, and, like, you know, the back and forth that he has. But yeah, I would say The Rock. I'd say, and it's funny because it's always stuff like that, right? It's The Rock. It's a Will Smith. It's you know what I mean? It's entertainers. Yeah, you know what I mean? Where it's entertainers in kind of that realm now, where it's that have that look, man, there is nothing you can say about The Rock or Will Smith as far as, yo, both of them actually do a good job of speaking up on injustices and are a very forward and progressive thinking, but also have the hearts of, you know, the vast majority of white America. And so it definitely it's interesting thinking the possibilities there.
That'll be the one rub against LeBron. So yeah.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
Right now, there's nothing. The moment one of them tried to take that stand, there would be something.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Right. All of a sudden, oh man, you know, why do you think Jada doesn't look like the way Jada used to look like? Will was smacking her in the face. She had to go do something. Like there'd be all types. Well,
it's already they would open up the open relationship stuff. They would do all types.
Right. All of a sudden, the Rock. Oh, The Rock is really on steroids. That's why he's that big and blah blah blah. I mean, look, just something, and that's why I keep saying it doesn't matter who we put out there. We need to stop falling for the same foolishness over and over again because they have a plan. They have a set of tactics that they put in place whenever somebody raises up.
The playbook is out.
And they just totally
all they do is
plant dissension and all types of stuff.
Is refine that playbook, and it's in a sense a sidebar, but I watching that Jeffrey Epstein special on Netflix, and you see,
is it good? I saw it.
Look, it's not about good. It is extremely eye-opening to the fact that this guy was doing this stuff in the fucking 90s, excuse my French, but raping these little girls in the 90s was known, like it was officially known about in the early 2000s, and had never really, was brought fully to pay for the crimes that he committed. And more importantly, the exposure of who is involved in the continued pedophile ring that is going on. But it was eye-opening watching that same rinse and repeat tactics that allows you to see how they play that game of, look, as soon as, like, we've been doing this forever, like the beginning of time since we've seen Black people try to have an uprising. We already know the playbook and we just refine it, every time. You know what I mean? We see what works and what doesn't. We A/B test the life out of it. That's why there's such a interesting feeling in general around Black Lives Matter. And, there are even Black people who feel that they are a militant group designed to, try to burn and tear down the country or something, and don't really understand the full cause of what's going on and what it was created out of. That it's a real playbook and agenda that they run to a T across numerous things, that it's until we as a people are able to pull that wool from over our eyes, it is a true uphill battle.
Speaking of wool from over
had
the
to be 5 years, 5-6 years now, Black Lives Matters, when you think about the existence from become in the national spotlight. But when we think about an individual or even an entity, if that's the entity, think about the historical things though. You got the NAACP, you got all these other organizations that have been around and have platforms and have had charges to do stuff and support stuff, but where has it gotten the larger group? Right?
That's a great question, BJ. We're gonna handle that on another podcast.
Yeah, and I leave it out there just to chew on, because I go to it all the time and no, I don't have an answer to it. We're always waiting for that one person to rise up, or that it's gonna take the collective, that one figurehead. In my opinion, it is almost like a coalition and not one figurehead in order for it to move forward. Bottom line, because that waiting on one person is always going to be a sect that falls back to what Kay just said. Well, what about this? Back in kindergarten, this man did this. Like, look.
It's like Art was saying last week, though, with Hydra, where it's that same situation where you have to have something big enough that if they cut off one head of the quote-unquote snake, there are still others, there to replace it, as opposed to it being the ability to just have this one guy that they will quickly, this one person that they will quickly figure out ways to tarnish the belief in what that they stand for and what they do. And so I think that is a strong point, that there needs to be the unity of a group and an understanding in a movement that will allow it to really resonate and create the true improvements that we seek.
I know where you're trying to go, Brett. You're trying to take us. You trying to start our closing exercises, maneuvers here. But you mentioned Jeffrey Epstein, and I gotta ask this. I want to answer for it. Somebody got to give us something in the comments on Facebook or IG or something. If rappers can find a way to drop verses from jail, how come we haven't heard anything from Bill Cosby? That's all I want to know. I just want to know why we haven't heard anything from Bill Cosby, who's locked up.
They shut all of Bill Cosby's. That's because there is no media outlets who are willing to risk giving him any exposure at all. And I know when quarantine first started, I had heard some little stuff because I know he was trying to be taken out of jail because of quarantine. He
They
might,
wouldn't even let him come out of jail for that.
It's COVID.
and he might have actually been. I have to look it up. He might have actually been successful on getting some type of reprieve or like home based. Don't quote me on it, but I know he was at least seeking it because I know R. Kelly tried and got denied. I know there was somebody else who tried.
That's what I was thinking of when you was talking about Epstein. I was like, oh, we got another R. Kelly.
Oh, I haven't, and that's funny. I've never watched any of those R. Kelly specials.
Oh, I can't watch it. I can't.
Yeah,
watch
and I mean, I pretty much, I just already blacklisted them. You know, it's.
Yeah.
I just never, you know what I mean? It's weird because I will not lie, I was an avid R. Kelly fan, but it's been, I guess, it speaks to how much music there truly is in the world because in a sense, I did think that I would miss R. Kelly music, but at the same time, I don't know the last time I played an R. Kelly song
Can't
or
do it.
listened to an R. Kelly song or even like, don't get me wrong, I will sing along if one comes on, I will. But I also have the thoughts of like, dang,
Yeah,
what was
it's
he
like-
thinking? What was he thinking when he wrote this? Who was this about? What was going on? That it definitely throws you off.
Bill Cosby, they denied his early
They
release.
denied it? Okay.
Yep.
Good call.
Yeah. Carol, one of the things that you talk about all the time, and it finally like hit home with me not too long ago, was the organization piece. And that's the Hydra, you know, the organization and the ability for people to channel energy together to push the agenda forward is so critical. And there are so many ways for us to actually be involved, whether it's through Black Lives Matter, .com. I found a site that I was really in tune to. I posted a video on the 13th floor Instagram page and Facebook. Check it out. It's How We Fight, howwefight.com. And they really break down things and put a plan of action in together. There's so many ways to be involved, and we're going to post those throughout the week for those who may not already be seeing them every which way on social media. But the organization is critical. That figurehead or the person, or even if it was a Telegram or a Signal group, but like between the Killer Mikes, the T.I.s, the Obamas, the Oprahs, and all of that, to like really coalesce around this and even get your world figureheads. I don't know who exactly they are, but I know I got a recording of some Palestinian or some Iranians that say, hey, we will stand with you all too. Just coordinating these efforts to continue to push the needle forward.
Where is Oprah and Gail though? Where are Oprah and Gail?
They're running there's a special on right now that they're doing.
Oh, word.
Right now,
Okay.
right now as we're recording, there's a special that they're doing.
See, so there it is, man. We'll post those out and get those out to you. Before we go round the robin, to close this thing on out, man, Chris alluded to it a little earlier, but yeah, we got an announcement to make for everybody on the 13th floor. Fellas, we pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Ooh.
Hey, Chris, look at that. I'm like, what was said earlier? I just saw
Another revolutionary, huh?
Wow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
from congrats, brother. Congrats, fam.
Quarantine.
Huh?
Yeah, about to say happy
Y'all
quarantine.
quarantine.
Appreciate you. Yeah, man, we found out sometime into May. I was in Florida, actually. I think it was May 29th. She had given me the call or whatever. So we're going through doctor visits and trying to set up gynos and everything. She's mad tired and hungry as shit all the
Pregnancy
time.
brain.
Huh?
That's why she's been forgetting stuff. Pregnancy brain.
You can try to blame it on that if you want. But yeah, man. Pregnancy, it's crazy. So that's going to be a whole new adventure we're going to have on the 13th floor sporadically. But yeah, definitely want to let the fellas know.
Man,
Back
that's
in
awesome,
business.
man.
Congratulations.
Wow. Congratulations.
February, Nick?
We don't know yet. We haven't gone to the gyno yet because we had to get insurance and everything situated. So hopefully that's going to be happening. She's the end of the month at the latest. We're going to try to find somebody to do an ultrasound earlier so we can get some information in. But yeah,
Yes, sir.
there it is. So,
Another young one we gotta prepare for, man, and get this stuff straight for them. Tell them
man,
Asher,
this baby is gonna
tell them
be.
Asher it's for me.
Say again.
Tell Asher, say it's for me.
Man, go
Not
put your
gonna
mask
happen.
back on so we can get groovy.
We want Bat Boy back.
I'm trying to tell you where you get the red bat
that would
mask
be-
from. That's what I want to know.
That would be Super Asher.
Super Asher.
Super
I
Asher.
like it. Oh, my
Look at him.
bad.
He's ready. Go get the costume, man.
Where is Super Asher?
Asher said I took off all the superhero stuff.
Oh, you took off all your superhero stuff, so you're regular Asher now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right, regular Asher. Well, be fresh, man. We coming your way for the fresh ovation this week. Unless Asher, you got something more to say? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
Break it down, Asher.
Who were you when you came upstairs?
Superboy.
Oh,
Super
okay.
Boy.
Superboy.
Nice.
There
Who
it
are
is.
you
What's your-
now?
Hey, Asher, can you hear me?
Now yes, little Asher.
What's your superpower?
Well, now I'm going to bed.
Now you going to bed? So that's your superpower? You put everybody to sleep? One here to quit us? I gotta send y'all this video, man. My dog just straight knocked this dude out, man. Some
In front of that car.
The Nazi?
the Nazi, yes.
Yes. Oh man, that video's been going around. There's this
Oh
one guy.
my God.
He just had it replayed right here, dude. Just getting licked. And he just talked about, man, I got some serious questions. You know, anybody know where he got that gray sweatshirt? The dude was just like, man, I've been wanting a sweatshirt. You just see, The
Yeah,
dude
that
just
was
getting
some serious,
lit up.
man. That
It
was
was
something
fantastic.
serious.
There's nothing like watching a racist get beat down. I mean, it just
Annihilated.
It's always refreshing. It's always a great time had by all.
Yo, we gotta send protection out for Jimmy though. I don't know what's going on out there in LA. It's like what 3 videos we done seen this week with my
Jimmy
man.
is living on the edge.
Is that Jay Fingers?
Jay Fingers, baby. Shout out to
Shout out
Jay
Jay
Fingers.
Fingers.
Be
And
cool
shout out
ENT.
Jay Fingers. He don't listen to the podcast. He don't listen to podcasts.
Jay Fingers, stop hating, man. What you just waiting on your invitation? Carol, call him out, man. Tell him he can come on next week. What's up?
Well, as soon as people can go to the movies again, that's going to be our black movie correspondent. So
Boop, just like that.
That's what we got art for.
no. That's for play.
Fresh, what you got this week, man? What you got this week, brother?
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and give first a little poem snippet. Many of y'all know this ditty, but I thought it was great to bring back a little piece for today. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may try me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise. That is I Rise by Maya Angelou. Still I Rise, excuse me. But just like I said last week, and just like I'm going to continue to champion, I think now is the time to consistently and continuously stay on their next, pun intended, to continuously call out these people, small to large corporations, on their lack of sensitivity to what is going on in the temperature of our nation. Now is the time to make sure we are working on exposing and stomping out all pieces of racism and letting it be known. I'm not saying this call needs to be confrontational, but I do think that the voices need to be heard, and you can no longer allow the people that you used to call friends or associates to continue to have the ability to speak down on or on topics that they should not be speaking and don't have a full understanding of. Now is the time to draw that line in the sand and to adamantly ensure that it is known we are not tolerating any form of racism or bigotry, and that we are going to continue to expose and annihilate it at a quick and rapid pace. And that is Fresh Ovation. We out.
Hey, listen, man. Dear white people, that was your public service announcement. All right. It is not the time for you to think that you can say or do whatever you want out of your mouth in public places. I mean, the Karens are getting dealt with, the neo Nazis are getting dealt with. I have dealt with a couple of potential situations with coworkers and colleagues to make sure that people, for lack of better words, have got their minds right when dealing and approaching with us. So, you know, really, if you don't have an intelligent thought to say out of your mouth, I think you might want to keep it to yourself, because we are at a point where there is no humble nature or just, you know, taking it and, hey, kumbaya. No, we are going to let you know exactly where you are wrong and why you are wrong, and you will have to deal with it. So please be warned that this is the time of education, I should say. You know, ignorance will not be tolerated.
This is forevermore. This is not a don't think that this is just for the summer, that we just gonna keep the summer hot. This
Oh
is
no, not at all. Like,
this is poor vita. This is poor life. This is the way it shall be forevermore.
yeah, I mean, I think if you think, like, if you're seeing, looking at what you're seeing right now, you might want to get used to it, because this is only the beginning. Like, we haven't even scratched the surface of where this whole thing is going. So, yeah, just be open to conversation and understand. Be humble and accountable, and yeah, we gonna be great. Damn, Coach K, I almost took your thunder, bro. I was about to close it out. What you got?
No, man, y'all were on a roll, man. Y'all were doing your thing. So what I'll say is, listen, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you all tuning in. You can catch this podcast every week on SoundCloud, Vimeo, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, all of those, Spotify, and we're still looking to be on a few more platforms. And look, we're well into this thing. So please, once again, we want y'all to drop your comments. So many people listen that we don't even know you're listening. We'd love to know that you're listening. Please drop some reviews, drop some comments, and
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
tell a friend to tell a friend. And you know what? You know what's frustrating? I don't even know how many people listen to a whole podcast, to our whole podcast. I don't know how many people have ever even know that I close out the show every week. I don't know. If you do, please let us know that you're listening. I mean, well, we know who our regulars are that actually listen. We know who they are. We appreciate you. We love you. But Fresh addressed the non-minority contingency, the white folks. Brett did a little bit of that. I want to address the black folks and any of the minorities that are on board. Just to say that you can't be a sucker. You can't sit there and run out of breath, run out of energy. You are not allowed to get tired during this movement. I'm sorry, you're just not. If you focus on what the big picture is and where we're trying to get to, you'll understand that this is not a one-man race. And we're out there, some of us are out there waiting for Usain Bolt of the black movement, of the Black Lives Matter movement, to see that one person that's going to run and win this race for us. And that's not it. This is a marathon relay.
Thank you.
Is what it is. And what that means is you are going to have to be the leader until you are so compelled to be led by somebody else. So that means do not wait. Just start leading. Even if you're just leading yourself, you're leading you and one other person, and keep going until you come up on somebody else you can pass the baton to, at which point it is not your time to rest. It is your time to go and get support for that person that now has the baton. It's time for you to go get them some water, some whatever they need to keep going. But this is one where once we pass the baton, we recharge, and we go take our place to get the baton again. Because if we just depend on a few people, listen here, one or two things are going to happen. Either A, they're going to be assassinated. B, they're going to die. for the cause, and we just have to have a never-ending, infinite line of people that are ready to continue this movement. As the guys have said, a multi-headed monster. If you got a multi-headed monster, you don't know which one you need to hit in the head to knock the beast down. And that's what it has to be. You're running a marathon relay with a multi-headed monster where any one person could win the race. And that's the only way we're going to get through this. And for those of you that are wavering and you backing up the status quo and you sitting there turning your finger and your head up like you too good for this, man, just I don't even know what to tell you, man. Move to Antarctica with no jacket. How about that?
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. We're done here on the 13th floor where the furniture isn't always the best, but the views are amazing.
Welcome to where the furniture isn't always the best, but the views, they are amazing.
It's the 13th